So yeah, the first startup that I actually ever ran was a play, and it taught you all the aspects of managing budgets, reaching out to customers, marketing it, all those kinds of elements. And for about 10 days, I ran a play at Wits, and all the profits that we made from that show then funded the show to take it to Grahamstown to go and do the Fringe Festival. And the Fringe Festival taught me how hard acting really is, and having to really humble yourself to try and beg, borrow, and steal your way to people's hearts so they will come to your play. And I got an opportunity to go and work for some friends after that who'd started a PR company. Didn't really know what PR was about, but for me it was quite fascinating. I got to work on the launch of the Virgin Money credit card in 2007. Richard Branson came out to South Africa and Puffy slid off the Absa Towers, and he smashed into a parking lot and drove a 4x4 through a sign that spoke about the rip-off that people were being exposed to from a credit card perspective. And I learned all about strategic storytelling for brands. And at the time, journalists were the most important influencers in your world because they could talk from one to many by just typing out 300, 400 words. And then a couple of years after doing that, I won a fancy dress competition to go to London to watch the Proteas play cricket. So my best mates and I, we moved to London for 2 years. I worked in PR and comms there for 2 years. And at the time, I was really fascinated with Twitter. I got my first kind of smartphone hybrid. It wasn't a full smartphone, it wasn't a normal feature phone. It gave me access to basic web apps, and I could use Facebook and Twitter on my phone. So I'd sit on the tube into town every day and follow people and read their tweets and look at influencers and journalists and certain celebrities and what they were saying. And eventually in 2009, I started scribbling some drawings on some napkins at Starbucks saying, like, this is what I want to launch. This is the thing that I think is going to be important in South Africa. CCOM was launching from a broadband perspective. So I felt that the future was in Africa and South Africa in particular. And I wanted to come back home after my international experience and create jobs and start a new type of agency that I still reference today is the holy trinity of marketing, which for me is all around digital, PR, and activation. So even if you can engage with your fans or your customers on digital, the way that we really connect with one another is in person. And lockdown has shown us how valuable human connection is. And like I say, is that no matter how digital savvy we become, the more we crave human interaction. And so I thought that those elements needed to connect in order to create a new form of advertising agency that it spoke more to experiences and storytelling than anything I'd experienced before. And in 2010 we launched. We picked up some work with Miller, with Rock the Boat, and we did all of their community management. And for me, I heard a great quote the other day from Tim Ferriss. He said, "Your network is your net worth." And that for me was carried me through my experience, where my people I know is the most important value to my business. And reached out to a few friends who were brand managers or people who I knew were working at brands or at agencies. And I slowly started picking up one or two pieces of business. And Miller was an interesting one because I'd said to myself, I'm going to give myself 3 months to get my business off the ground. I'd saved enough to start within 3 months. I had the advice of a close friend of mine, and she actually did some work with me at the start. Her name's Melissa Attry. She said to me, don't let the fears of financial failure cripple you, because finance is a horrible thing. It can really constrict your creativity, and it can stop you from unlocking value in what it is that you're trying to create. So within 3 months, I managed to close my first retainer, and that was massive. It was a 10,000 Rand a month retainer in 2010. And that for me, it took so much pressure off because it allowed me to just sit back and relax a bit. I was living very frugally and not spending.
Just off the bat, that 2010 deal, which campaign was that? The first one you did with Melissa?
I've always been interested in the psychographics of your audience because it's more valuable than LSMs or demographics. Demographics split us into such binary kind of terms, whereas psychographics prove to you that a premium, higher affluent white dude and a premium affluent black dude can consume the same products, they can consume the same sports. Like, there's overlaps more in your psychology than there is in your race, background, shapes and sizes. And there's a good starting point, but by the time September 2010 came along, we had the best World Cup. It had been the most amazing, like Ubuntu, Zaminamina, Waka Waka. I got fucking armed robbed, man, in September. I'd come back from a music festival. I was with a girlfriend of mine, and she got tied up. At one stage, I thought she was going to get raped. They sat on her, they sat on me, guns at my head. I got fucked up by them, and they went through the house. They took the cell phone out my pocket. I got tied up with my shoelaces, and it was one of those like frightening home invasion kind of experiences. And a few days later, I mean, insurance was amazing. I got my MacBook back in a few days, which was my everything. It had all my work on it, to just kind of my entire ecosystem as an entrepreneur. And nothing was back. As entrepreneurs, we have some of the most traumatic experiences. We have failures, we have low lows, we have like proper depressing kind of outcomes. And if we don't talk to one another about that, we won't realize that all of us have gone through some kind of trauma or challenge in setting up our businesses or trying to give it a crack. And for me, I don't think there's ever a right time to start a business, and everybody's journey is different. I was fortunate enough to go to university, and at the same time, I also was fortunate in my decision was to work first before starting my own thing. I was 27 by the time I started Retroviral, and that's still very young by some means. Like David Ogilvy started Ogilvy at 37, and I'm 37 now. So, there's always a different journey for different people. There's no right time. There's no expiry date. And that year we picked up Nando's as a client. At the time, they only ever took those posters that we now are so familiar with on the internet when anything happens from a social talkability point of view. Back in the day, they paid to take out a page in Sowetan, in Daily Sun, in Sunday Times, and that's how they would run their creative. And we said to them, why not just post it on the internet, post it on social? We'll use well-known people online. They weren't called influencers yet, but it was effectively the early stages of influencer marketing. So, that's kind of what we started out as. Like, our niche was purely amplifying content and doing influencer marketing before influencer marketing had a tag. And we worked on some Nando's campaigns. So for me, the most important people that are valuable to your business are the people that are in your first degree circle of network. So the only way you can do business is by knowing somebody. The only way you can get customers is by convincing them that you have something of value to add. So for me, it's always who's in your immediate circle. Could be friends, could be family, could be a distant cousin. Who is that perfect customer for you to target? And for me, a one-on-one email, a call, or a visit. It's still very old school, but it's the perfect way to go about establishing. Once you win one or two customers or one or two pieces of new business, it makes you feel that, you're onto something. And it gives you that added bit of energy. It's almost like a sip of Red Bull. It just keeps you going to the next thing. And you will have those hard days, and you will fall off, and you will get into trouble, and you will fuck things up. But ultimately, it's those small wins that compound, and like an investment, they compound to give you greater returns and greater benefits. And so many times we don't know what we're doing when we start businesses. It's the same thing as being a parent. You don't know what you're doing. There's no handbook to tell you how to do it. Even if you've studied like a formal entrepreneurship degree, like I said earlier, just start it. But at the same time, try not to sink money into it where you don't have to. So that's where, like, for me, people say, well, should we have a social media agency? And I said, well, guys, you can't afford it yet. So just do your own social, or just post to your own Facebook, or send out your own WhatsApp updates to your own contacts. When it comes to launching apps and products, for me, I haven't veered into that space until I was really happy that money invested into product can be lost, and it's not as big a deal as I'm not going to be able to eat or pay my rent at the end of the month. I don't need money. I need a laptop and a cell phone. And what can I do with that? What are my strengths? What is my background? What is my network? And what can I do? And remember, like, it's not about being a pioneer and creating things that didn't exist yesterday necessarily. Like, they're incredibly successful plumbers, they're incredibly successful builders, and they're just doing something that 1,000 other people already do. So why would you be the plumber that I would call? Because we've got rapport, because you came here and you gave me a good service. And I'll be like, shit, remember that entrepreneurship has this, like, it has this golden sort of halo, that it's the rock star lifestyle, it's the Facebook 1-2 billions, it's the Instagram story. But those stories that we hear in the press are so few and far between. It's actually an anomaly to be successful. So what is the thing that's going to generate you revenue and income? So for me, I'm a fan of guerrilla marketing and stunts. So if I had 1,000 Rand, a laptop and a cell phone, for me, I would probably find a fancy dress costume, stand on the corner of a busy intersection, and create some kind of hype to get my thoughts out there. I love DJ Spoo, because, you know, the Mofire drink and the gimmick that he rolls with, like, that was something that he personally stood on the corner of intersections, both in the suburbs and in the townships, and he went out there. I mean, he's a well-known dude. Like, a lot of DJs and a lot of, like, celebrities, they won't humble themselves to that level. But what I love about DJ Spoo, that mofo doesn't quit. He always hustles. He always has his vrpa gimmick that he tells when he opens a can of Mofire. And he's a perfect example of a hustler that's making his own future constantly. And that's why there doesn't need to be an obsession over marketing until you really are establishing some kind of presence. Even today, I mean, I don't do any SEO on Retroviral site. All the kinds of speaking gigs that I do, the interviews and PR that I do, those backlinks that I get from 702 or from CNBC Africa, those are far more valuable for my business. Because when people Google Retroviral, they come up with those links. They come up with Retroviral as a high name on Google's first page. And then for me, I mean, I've been growing my social accounts organically since 2008 with those first tweets that I put out. I mean, I've only got 18,000 followers on Twitter now, but I'm proud to say that they're all real people. There's no bots. If I ever need a favor, or if I need one of them to help me out, there's a lot of times where I can send a WhatsApp and say, please, man, we're launching this thing. Can you give us a shout out? Or can it help? And from there, that kind of adds added value. But in all kinds of value exchanges, what are you giving before what are you asking to receive something? And that's where I find that in a relationship that we've developed, we always try and provide extra value or additional value, or we try and make sure that people are fairly remunerated, whether they are staff and in-house people or whether they are suppliers and influencers and other people that we work with. Like, the same as when we work with small businesses, if they are our suppliers, like, I'm never going to make them wait 60 days for them to get paid. Like, I'm going to pay them on 30 days or earlier if I can. I always try and negotiate deposits up front so that we can get paid deposits, so we can pay deposits to our suppliers. And for me, like, that's a very important part of the ecosystem. The more you fight for your suppliers, the more they'll give you in return in exchange, and the more they'll remember you. And I think that's just a philosophy that we've tried to carry through for the last 10 plus years. Is like, just treat your suppliers. It's almost like the 11th commandment. Do unto your suppliers as you'd want done unto you.